Rachel accepted the offer on a Thursday, $43,000 above her previous salary, a senior title, and a company whose values she had memorized before the first interview. The first thing she saw when she walked in on day one was the values wall. Floor to ceiling. 10 words in large type: integrity, innovation, belonging, excellence, transparency. She had photographed it during the interview, referenced it in her thank you email. It was the reason she had chosen this company over 2 others. 3 years later, she sat in a conference room watching those same values get cited as the reason a colleague was being let go. He had raised a concern through the proper channel. He had documented everything. The value on the wall said transparency. The value in the room said something else entirely. She drove home that evening and sat in her car for a long time before going inside. Corporate culture is not what the company tells you it is. It is a designed system, built deliberately, engineered to produce specific behaviors that serve organizational goals. And the goals it serves have almost nothing to do with the employee experience it claims to be creating. Here's where it actually came from, and why it was never about you. In the 1980s, companies ran the numbers on employee turnover. The costs were significant, but the more interesting discovery wasn't the cost of losing people. It was the cost difference between keeping them with pay versus keeping them with identity. Pay is visible, measurable. It creates immediate budget exposure. Identity is cheaper. If an employee believes their work is meaningful, that the company shares their values, that they belong to something larger than a job, they become significantly harder to lose. Not because the job got better, because leaving now feels like abandoning something, not just resigning from somewhere. The Culture Initiative was born not from a desire to create better workplaces. It was born from a retention calculation. This is what Rachel didn't understand when she photographed that values wall. She was looking at the output of a retention strategy, not a statement of organizational character. Every element of it, the language chosen, the physical placement, the way it surfaced in the hiring process, was designed to create one specific feeling in one specific kind of candidate. The feeling of finding somewhere that gets it. That feeling is expensive to walk away from. That's the point. But what the culture never shows you on day one is what it actually costs to stay inside it. The culture has a second layer, rules that were never written down, enforced not through policy but through social consequence, through what happens to the people who violate them. You didn't raise problems publicly. Friction, regardless of its source, got attributed to the person who created it. You didn't leave at 5 if something visible was unfinished, not because anyone said so, because the people who did were talked about in a specific way, and everyone understood what that meant for their trajectory. You didn't question leadership direction once a project had buy-in. Questioning it got reframed, not as critical thinking, but as not being a team player, needing to develop executive presence. None of this required enforcement. Culture enforces itself. That's what makes it more efficient than policy. Policy needs documentation, process, a paper trail. Culture needs nothing except the accumulated understanding of what happens to people who step outside it. And here's what that enforcement looks like when it's working exactly as designed. Rachel watched it happen to a colleague named Marcus. Marcus asked the questions nobody else was asking. In meetings, when the plan had gaps, he named them. Not aggressively, specifically. He was almost always right. Within a year, he was no longer in the rooms where plans were made. No conversation, no formal warning. His title stayed the same. His salary stayed the same. He simply found himself outside an increasing number of decisions his role should have included him in. When he asked why, he was told he needed to work on his communication style. He was offered coaching. The coaching was about how to raise concerns in ways that were easier for leadership to receive. Not whether the concerns were valid. They almost always were. The culture had never been designed for people like Marcus. It had been designed to produce a specific kind of employee, someone who trusted leadership's judgment and channeled their energy into execution rather than interrogation. That employee is the cheapest employee to manage, not because they ask for less money, because they require almost no management energy. They absorb direction, they produce output, they stay. And now the part the culture was never going to tell you itself. The system wasn't built to create belonging. It was built to create dependency. Dependency on the identity, the community, the sense of meaning the company had positioned itself to provide. Because an employee who depends on the company for their sense of who they are at work is an employee who finds leaving very difficult. Rachel left 14 months after watching her colleague walk out. The strangest part of leaving, she told me, wasn't the logistics. The job search, the notice period, the transition. The strangest part was realizing how much of what she had believed about herself at that company had been constructed by the company. The way she thought about her own ambition, her own capabilities, her own fit, all of it had been shaped incrementally by a system designed to keep her oriented toward organizational goals and away from the question of whether those goals served her. She had spent 4 years inside a control system and called it a career. The values wall is still there. She knows because a former colleague sent her a photo after they repainted the office. Same words, same large type. New cohort of new hires walking past it on their first day. The company doesn't have a culture, it has a system. The system has a purpose, and the purpose was never you.